Hey everybody, this is part of our full-length primetime podcast. You can check it out on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, YouTube, plenty more. I hope you enjoy.
But Brandon, it's time to continue on in our preview. We're almost there. We got 4 teams left. We're going into the NC State Wolfpack, North Carolina State. And with this one, I kind of want to start off with kind of 2 points into one. Last season was a lot of almosts for the NC State Wolfpack. They almost beat national championship Clemson. They almost beat perennial power Florida State. They also had 2 heartbreakers, and 4 of the last 6 games were all losses of a touchdown or less. Also, this is a team that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, 0-10 against FBS top 25 teams. Is this finally the year that the Wolfpack get a win against a top 25 team, and B, can they turn these last 4 of 6 losses by a touchdown or less, do they flip those into wins this year? Is this the year where they turn everything around?
And Ricky, they're 0-10 against those ranked FBS teams in the last 4 years. And I think that this is the year that they certainly get a win against one of those teams. And I don't want to be that guy, but I'll be that guy. And I'll tell you that I think I know who it's going to be against. And they were really close last year. They're going to get them this year. No, Clemson.
Ooh. I didn't think you were going to say Clemson.
There's no Deshaun Watson.
That's what I was going to say. Is it
there's
because
no
there's no
Deshaun Watson there anymore.
Okay.
We're not as settled on the Clemson quarterback as we are with other quarterbacks in this Atlantic Conference or in the ACC overall. Again, they were close with Clemson last year, and they had Deshaun Watson. This year, I think they can get him. And I think that because of that, this team is... They're going up. They are going up. We can see that. They've got their quarterback returning this year. And I think that you look at their offense. They've got a running back who has had over 1,000 yards. They've got a number of different receivers. They don't have that seems to be number one standout receiver, but they've got some guys there. And I think that, Ryan Finley is a guy who can lead this team effectively and be the guy to be able to take them to the next level.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, the best way to describe Finley last season was he was steady, but he was nothing spectacular. I mean, he did complete over 60% of his passes. You want to see that. You want to see quarterbacks around that 60% completion mark, over 3,000 yards. The thing I like, though, 18 touchdowns to only 8 interceptions. Yeah. You got to, I mean, it might sound like, duh, thank you, Captain Obvious, but you got to have more touchdowns than you have interceptions, and the closer that interception number can be to 0, the better. I think it's all going to ride or die on him, and the reason being is he's the leader of this team. If he can go out there and not just, I'm not saying like, increase your numbers, stay the same, keep those numbers similar. However, maybe a few more touchdowns and a little bit less interceptions and lead this team. That's where it's going to come into it because, I mean, looking at their schedule for this upcoming year, they've got some big games. I mean, South Carolina on a neutral location to start the year on September 2nd. You're going to play Florida State on the road. You get Clemson at home, Louisville at home. However, good thing is you don't have to play the Coastal #1 from last year in Virginia Tech. You get to play North Carolina, but that's at the end of the season. Of course, you're going to play North Carolina. It's one of your biggest rivals. But I think what they can do is flip some of these games from last year. I'm very confident in this Wolfpack team because, I mean, you look at some of the losses that they had a year ago. Miami, they don't see Miami this year. I mean, you look at, they beat the Tar Heels from North Carolina, but Miami, you're not looking at them this year to go up against them. Florida State, you're going to play them again. Louisville, of course, you're going to play them. Of course, you're going to play Clemson. And then you do have Boston College on your schedule as well. I think with that, where Louisville and Florida State, Florida State will be interesting. I mean, depending on what team. I think Louisville's the only one of the top three that for sure beats you. I think Louisville this year, coming back with their quarterback and with how good they were last year, I don't think NC State beats them. Notre Dame will be interesting because it'll be on the road this year, and let's hope it's not played in a tsunami so that we actually get
a good sense of...
we get a football game and not a 10-3 let's play in the mud kind of a game. But those games down the stretch, taking away Miami out of your schedule, taking away some of those losses that you had and inserting teams like at Wake Forest, we talked about how young that team is. Finley will demolish that team, especially that team that I don't know if they're going to create as many turnovers as they did a year ago. And Syracuse, if their defense can't get up to snuff, it don't matter. Finley will put a ton of points on you no matter what that Syracuse offense does.
So one thing to note here for Syracuse is, for NC State is the fact that possibly the biggest guy on offense for them is gone. They're running back. And Matthew Days, who had over 1,100 yards last year and 10 scores, he's out of there. He's graduated. He's out. And you now have to take a look and see who's going to be the guy that leads it. And is it Reggie Gillespie? And if it's him, he's not going to be what Days was. And if it's not Gillespie, then it's going to be a committee of a number of different guys. They've got a veteran offensive line. This is the first team that we've talked about
that
tonight
has a line.
that has an offensive line. That's a veteran offensive line. That's good. And to not get 2,500 yards this year on the ground will probably be, let's say, a disappointment if they can't do that. And also that means that you have to look for somebody to hopefully then be able to step up in the receiving game as well. And one of those guys who I think is going to be that number one go-to guy is going to be Jalen Samuels. And this is a guy who can go out of the backfield. This is a guy who can, run some routes. He's going to be the number one player on this team, I think, either in front of or behind Finley.
31 touchdowns in 39 career games.
Impressive.
Almost a touchdown a game. Almost.
So I think that you get this guy going, you get him kick-started early, this offense will be able to do some good things, and that's how I think that this team is going to be able to really take the next step and be that sleeper, that dark horse that some people are calling for. Their defense, they don't have the outstanding best guys.
But they've got a phenomenal defensive line.
But they're solid. I think that overall defensively, they are not the best in the country.
I'd say they're one of the best defensive line-wise.
Because Alabama is there. But overall, I would say that they are, going to be a strong defense.
And when it comes to the defense, I've mentioned it a little bit there. Could you tell them the defensive line is going to be key for them? Like, they are returning 4 starters to this line, and one of them being Bradley Chubb, the all-ACC pick who had 21.5 tackles for loss last season on top of his 10.5 sacks. This defense is going to be anchored, I want to say, by that defensive line. And if they can get after the quarterbacks of Clemson, Lamar Action Jackson, and Florida State, and if they can get after Francois, then this NC State team might be able to knock off one of them. They might be able to knock off the Clemson Tigers if they can cause havoc for whatever quarterback Clemson is going to put behind center in the absence of Deshaun Watson, because he is now a Houston Texan. But the one guy I kind of want to mention just a little bit before you make the point you were going to make is when you mentioned the running back, a key guy to look for will be junior Nyhelm Hines. First name, couldn't say right. Last name, Hines. Got that one. It's easy. He's the guy that you're going to look at because he's played receiver the past 2 years, but because they lose their main running back from last year in Days, this is a guy who's going to be coming back and right now is slotted as running back number 2 on the depth chart.
The reason when I was talking earlier was in saying that their defense, wasn't the best in the country, or even one of the best.
Because you were looking at it as a whole unit.
Well, you have to look at it as a whole unit, and you have to look at that front. The front end of that defense. The front seven and stuff like that. They're hot. They're good. But they don't have enough playmakers in the secondary to be able to say that this defense overall is a stud defense. You make more plays in the secondary, you get more interceptions. I think that you're going to start hearing a little bit more about that defensive play of NC State.
Well, and the thing that I want to look at also is head coach Dave Doran. This could be like, I'm going to just read the quote from Athlon Sports. It says, the Wolfpack returned 22 seniors, half whom start, from a team that finished the 2016 season with a flourish. There is a sense among Wolfpack fans that this could be Doran's best team, but it also could be his last chance if things don't go right. And that is kind of to bring it full circle what we talked about earlier. Yeah, we're kind of questioning, can this team flip the script from last year? Those touchdown losses that we had, the 4 of last 6 games that you lost by a touchdown or less, can you flip those? But if you don't, does that mean this is Doran's last year at NC State and the Wolfpack are looking for a new coach at the end of the year? This is a team where we're saying, they could be on the cusp of good things, but if they don't get to that, if they don't go to those good things, do they get rid of the coach and kind of restart? Get a new guy in there. Get some fresh blood at the head coaching position.
Well, I think that you talk about flipping some things, and let's talk about a difference between being absolutely impressive at 9-4 and very mediocre at 7-6. And that was because of the kicking game, partially. 9 of 17 field goals last year, and Kyle Bombard Jr., he was 5 of 10, and they lost to Clemson because he missed 3 of his 4 field goal tries to be able to beat them. And this guy struggled mightily last year. And because of that, and because of some other games in there too, that was the difference. It's things like that. It's not necessarily something where you go, oh, it's the coaching philosophy, we've got to get him out of there. Sometimes it's just guy had a bad season, a couple of guys had a bad season, and it was in the wrong time. It was at the wrong time, in the wrong game, in the wrong situation. And what success would look like for NC State this year would be 9 wins. And if they don't have that, I don't think you can call it a successful season.
I see 8 wins. Just looking down the schedule, I see 8, and South Carolina fans are not going to like me. I got the Gamecocks, I got the Herd, I got Foreman, 3-0 to start. I've got Syracuse, that's 4. I got Pitt, that's 5. I got Boston College, that's 6. I've got Wake Forest, that's 7. I'm sorry, I meant 7. If you can take then 2 of the other games, North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, and win 2 of them, Notre Dame 2, win 2 of those games, I think North Carolina, they can win. They did it last year, and that was with a young Mitchell Trubisky as the starting quarterback. He's no longer there for the Tar Heels. We're going to get to him next week, but I think this team can get – there are 7 games on the schedule. You do what you're supposed to do. You get a W for that game. The other games, you just got to get it for 2 of them, and you can get to those 9 wins. And – I think North Carolina could be one of them. You brought it up earlier. Clemson's going to be an interesting one, all because of the quarterback question that we have right now, and we might not be as confident in Clemson this year as we were last year, although they are they've got the defense, and they've got one of the premier head coaches in this kind of all of college football. before we kind of move on, because we're going to get to the Florida State, Louisville, and Clemson trio coming up in a second, any last thoughts on the Wolfpack from NC State?
So what I want to make a point of is you talked about, Florida State, Louisville, Clemson. I think that Clemson, as I mentioned earlier in this segment, is the fact that, NC State could get them. And I do think that they will get them. But also, Florida State game, the Wolfpack have lost 4 in a row against Florida State.
Almost beat them last year,
and they
too.
have not won in Tallahassee since 2005. They are, as a baseball broadcaster would say, they're due.
Yeah.
And you would think that, maybe this could be the season. Dalvin Cook is not there anymore. Things are a little bit different at Florida State. Maybe they could get him.
Well, and that's going to be the big thing. Notre Dame, too. Notice how they got the win last year, but I didn't give them that for sure win this year. Not only is it at Notre Dame, what is Notre Dame going to do when the conditions of that game and the playing field might be a little bit more on the side of, hey, we can actually have a football game going. So let us know, NC State fans, what you guys think about your team down below in the comment section. Let us know about anything we talked about previewing your team.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed a lot of emotion. If you want more, click this video right over my left shoulder. You will certainly not regret it.